Good morning, Wrestling Inc. Welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily. It's me, your managing editor of WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, joined here as I am every Thursday by our very good friend Paul Pratt. No Polio Del Mar this week. Paul, you're back.
I'm back. Pride Month is over. Pride Month is over. So that means that I get to spend my days mostly just as me.
Yeah. Wow. It's July 1st, isn't it?
It is.
Man, I've written the date down several times today. It just doesn't feel like July. June went by so quickly.
The whole year has gone by quickly, Nick.
Yeah, it is time. Like the sands of glass through an hourglass, something like that. Days of our lives.
Like sands through an hourglass.
That's the one. Well, that's right. Last night was the last night of Pride, and like I was telling you before we got on the air, yeah, Liz and I fell down a Polio Del Mar YouTube lip sync music video kind of rabbit hole last night. And Paul, you do some incredible work, man. I was so impressed.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. You know, I thank you for that because you were watching, I guess, like the stuff that becomes digital drag for us performers during the COVID era had to find new ways to like reach audiences or pass our time. And one of the videos on there, I was like in Florida with my mom, and I was like, Mom, I'm gonna staple some stuff to your wall, and like, you know, could you go get me a bra and jewelry? My mom comes out of her room with like her bra and her jewelry. I'm like, thanks. Sure. You know, yeah. But you know what this makes me think about too is like the fact that we even bring this up here when we're getting ready to talk professional wrestling. This morning I was looking at Twitter, and somebody was kind of lambasting Pro Wrestling Illustrated for having inclusion of more women and more people from the LGBTQ plus community in their rating systems, in their publication in general. And it just made me really grateful that you and Raj and Wrestling Inc. are giving me a platform to come on here and like represent Devon Monroe and myself and others from our community. Because, you know, the world of professional wrestling is changing, but it's still a place where a lot of our fans are not necessarily hyped to the inclusion.
Is that a real thing that's happening this morning? I haven't really had the time to like jump deeply onto social media. Are people complaining about representation by Pro Wrestling Illustrated right now? That seems
there's only one specific person that they responded to, but just like scrolling through and seeing that, you know, for every one there's, you know, and it's just a fact. And I live in a bubble where it's easy to forget. I live in San Francisco. I live on social media surrounded by people who are fans of professional wrestling, especially independent LGBTQ plus professional wrestlers and personalities. And I'm growing into that category, right? Like, you know, I'm growing into that category. And I forget that there are people out there who are what we would consider like those traditional wrestling fans from bygone eras that still bring that, that are just not as open to that idea.
Yeah. Wow. That sucks, Paul. Well, F them, right? Yeah. I mean, that's ridiculous. So
well, F-y them.
Well, F-y, yeah.
F-y them. Yeah. But it's one of the things that I'm not surprised, and it doesn't hurt my feelings that people have those opinions because it's nothing new. But what it does do for me is like turn the focus towards a place of gratitude that places like Wrestling Inc., you, Raj, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. By the way, my first article is in Pro Wrestling Illustrated. It's a cover story in this issue that's out today. So, you know, I'm just grateful that there's places that are progressive and changing and allowing for representation.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, that's a great way to start July. We're going to keep the conversation going here, and we'll keep the conversation going all year round. That's what Effie would like us to do. I've heard the speech, you know.
That's what I would like us to do.
Yeah, that's true. Let's do it for everybody, right? So exactly. All right. Well, we got a great show here planned today. Me, Paul. First of all, on top of it being July 1st, I guess today, according to Samantha, is Happy Canada Day.
It is Canada Day. Happy Canada Day.
Happy
Canada.
Your rivers something flow. I have no idea what the words are to that song.
That's why I stopped after the first two words.
I like making up the words to songs, so that's really fun. Also,
not the national anthem of Canada. Come on now.
Whatever. Like, I don't expect him to know our national anthem.
Well, that's so un-American of you to expect everybody around the world to know everything about us.
I have no expectations of anyone about anything, to be fair, though. So I have very low expectations across the board. All right. We have a great show, like I said. We're going to talk to news, me and Paul. After the news block, we're going to hear the latest conversation. This is a really unique one. I had a chance to chat with Rodney Mack, former WWF WWE superstar. He was also an ECW part of DeBaldi's, trained by Junkyard Dog, and really hasn't been. I mean, he's down at SWE right now, current TV champion.
I was going to say, like, I watch him on SWE a lot, and he's a major star in Southwest Wrestling Entertainment, and he's married to Jazz.
He is. We talk about their marriage, too. Very successful marriage, him and Jazz.
And they run a school together.
They do, yes, the Dog Pound. Did you see the video of Rodney knocking out that fan who was trying to punch Charlie Haas, or no?
I did not see that.
Okay. Well, I referenced.
Meanwhile, Charlie Haas is kind of a legit badass too. So I'm surprised he didn't just knock him out himself or call out Jackie to do it.
You got to watch the video clip, and I would suggest it. You know, we're going to debut it here 53 minutes over on the Wrestling Inc. YouTube channel for those of you watching us live in video form. But I encourage you to go find the Rodney Mack punches fan at SWE video. I think it's on YouTube, Twitter, whatever. But like Charlie, this guy's going nuts. He's drunk. He's yelling. Charlie kind of comes to him and he kind of pushes him back, right? Like, oh, you think you're such a big guy. This dude goes to punch Charlie. And by the time this dude reared back his hand, like Rodney had him down. Like Charlie was kind of like, I think lost that moment, but Rodney was not. Rodney levels this guy and he just drops like a bag of potatoes to the ground.
Yeah, this speaks to a couple things. First of all, I think that we were just talking about wrestling fans of a bygone era. You know, SWE definitely programs towards a specific kind of audience. And if you watch SWE programming, it gives you that really old school feel. And Charlie Haas is their top heel. You know, he was, last time I was watching, which was just a few months ago, their champion, does great heel work. Defeated the ultra lovable Tim Storm for that title, right? And so the fact that he's got some kind of drunk Texas fan who's in his face doesn't surprise me. And honestly, like I said, I'm just surprised that Charlie Haas didn't drop him himself.
Yeah, well, yeah, he didn't have. I mean, Rodney just got to it quick.
Didn't have the chance.
You know,
Rodney's like, no, this one's mine. Boom.
Yeah,
pandemic aggression.
Yeah, Rodney dropped him. So we referenced that. It gets really kind of heavy towards the end too. So a wide range of emotions here with Rodney Mack. Definitely stick around for that. At the end of the show, we're going to just look at heels in pro wrestling, who you think is the best. Really kind of just broad question. But before we dive to the news, I want to remind everybody this Monday, there will be no show. There will be no audio or video show. We're celebrating Independence Day. I have the day off. So no show on Monday. We'll be back on Tuesday. Just want to get that out of the way. So enjoy that. And by the way, while we're talking about Independence Day, Samantha, who brought up how it's Canada Day, said that she knows my anthem.
Yeah. And she knows Anthem Sports because they actually bring us Impact Wrestling. But I think, honestly, I do think that a lot of people know the United States national anthem. It's weird. I mean, I think part of that is because of the fact that they play it before all the sporting events. And we have we have Canadian sporting teams that are part of our major organizations.
Yeah. I feel bad now. Like now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I should take the time to learn the Canadian national anthem.
I mean, I know the first two words, which is about as good as I can do, honestly, for the national anthem of the United States. Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool. Well, onward. Let's talk some pro wrestling here. Time for news.
Let's do it.
News you can leave a bruise. Last night's Dynamite. So, like, first of all, I want to just say, because the news we're going to talk about here is not necessarily, I think, the kind of stuff that AEW would like hope we're talking about coming out of the show. Yeah. I did think for their final show or whatever, live Jacksonville show, that was a really strong show last night. There wasn't really a whole lot of weakness in that video package they played at the end, and like really leaning in, like, kind of that last breath of Brody grievance there. Or grieving, I should say, not grievance. Mm-hmm. Just really powerful, man. I watched it this morning and I was like a little teary when that show was done last night.
I fast forwarded through the video package, but I did, while I was watching last night, I reflected on the fact that I actually was kind of in Jacksonville for about a third of the time that they were there. And I felt really grateful to be able to go to a televised pro wrestling event, broadcast like this almost every week, every other week. I had a season pass, right? So from December on until the middle of March, I went every other week to AEW Live, plus a lot of their pay-per-view events, and got to see it live and in person. And that's something that we won't. It's just not going to be possible because they're going to be on the road, So you would have to fly from location to location. I could leave my mom's house and drive over to watch this at Daly's place in 15 minutes. It was door to door, and there was no parking. I loved it. Like no parking issues, easy get in. Nobody sitting on top of me, cramping my style. Great wrestling action. So the pandemic was good for me in terms of pro wrestling.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I that sounds awesome, and definitely watching it. You should watch, dude. Paul, go watch the video.
Watch the video package.
Yes, go watch. It's really well done.
I know it was really well done. I started to watch it, and then I was like, "There's too much Cody."
There was a fair amount of Cody.
I was like, "There's too much Cody," and I started fast forwarding it. And then at one point, as I'm fast forwarding, I saw them like do that zoom in on Brody Lee, and I was like, "And it's sad. Keep fast forwarding."
There was a lot of Cody, and it was sad. That's not a terrible way to describe that promo package. It's just, it feels like the end of summer camp, right? It's like prom. We're all graduating to the next thing now.
Yeah, I mean, and I know that for them, what a blessing it was, really, that Tony Khan owned that facility that happened to be fantastically well suited for live pro wrestling action. Yeah. And what a blessing as well that the people who were going to those events live, they didn't experience that same kind of burnout or lack of interest, for example, that when we had the Impact Zone in Orlando, where people would go to like the actual amusement park, would get free passes there, they could go watch the pro wrestling, and people complained about it because people sort of weren't into it or didn't know what was going on. The people at Daly's place, we were going by choice because we're pro wrestling fans and we wanted to be there. And we were, even with a third of the capacity or whatever it was, a quarter of the capacity, we were still a hot audience for them, and it was great because they presented fantastic live experience for us and we responded.
And you had to want to be there, right?
Absolutely.
Like you had to want to be at these shows and be a
paid
part
to be there.
Right. But like, the Impact Zone or Impact Arena or whatever you want to call it, there's so much stuff to do. Like that, it wasn't the same kind of it wasn't like we're trapped in a foxhole here kind of thing.
No,
man. And it's just wild now. Like that, watching that video and just kind of dawning on me, like, how we are graduating. Like we're going to start to move on to the next phase. This period of time, like this COVID era, like we're going to start to see books and DVDs and documentaries and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Just looking at what was this weird 20-ish month period of time in professional wrestling.
And I think that hopefully a lot of the stagnancy that I've been feeling in the world of professional wrestling is going to evaporate, because we are going to see them back in front of large audiences again. And we already saw some of it last night. Like you can't, what makes me think of the Ethan Page promo where he was like, they were being so loud over him, and he handled it like a master because he addressed them and then went right back to what he was saying. But there's situations where when you have a hot live audience like that, you cannot control their outcome. And they have not been used to that for the last 20 months. They get to come out and cut their promo exactly how they want it. No real interruptions. Maybe they stop and play to the audience, but behind the scenes secret here about being in Daly's place. Yes, there was a live audience, but the predominant people that you were hearing responding on television were the wrestlers who were ringside, because that area is most mic'd up. And so the wrestlers, they probably, even though I think that they were given a little bit of free reign to come out there and do what they want, they're still part of the show. So they had not exactly a canned response, but a little more controllable response. So with the live audiences, they're not going to be able to do that. So we're going to start to see who really are the stars of the show, who really can connect with the audience. And that connection to the audience and the ability to do that organically is the most important thing that we've been missing, I think, throughout the pandemic.
It was so clear to like the main event, Sammy Guevara, MJF. Sammy is a star for AEW.
Yes.
And MJF as well, right? They both just They both just played their roles so well. That match was executed so well. The dirty finish, I had no qualms. That half an hour, you talk about letting the guys breathe. There was like just this little moment where MJF was walking around on the outside, and there was this one fan just like seething, screaming at him, red in the face. And Max just stands there and gives it like 5 seconds, because I swear to God, I've seen him do the same thing in MLW. Like, he must just love the visual of standing just like 3 feet away from a fan with their finger in his face. It just understands how that translates on camera. Just you're right, little things where they're letting the talents kind of take some ownership. And I mean, that main event, I was either Shivani or Jim, or I think it was Shivani on commentary, called it out. When AEW gets to Texas, I cannot wait to see what kind of a welcome Sammy Guevara gets in a space like that.
And they're also being very wise about where they're booking right now.
Yeah.
Depending on, I think that they're booking places very smartly. Number one, because of the fact that those are the places that are most open for them to go. But at the same time, they're starting to, I'm guessing that they're going to use those opportunities to dictate how people are perceived. Like, we're going to Britt Baker's hometown. We've got Andrade El Idolo making his in-ring debut in Miami. So, there's going to, that surprised me, because I'm like, if you want him to be a heel, Miami's probably not the place to do that. Texas, a lot of these places where people are sort of like, that's their home environment type of feel. And they're going to get a very specific kind of response.
Yeah. We just said a lot of nice things about Dynamite last night. The lead,
and that brings that to a close.
And the lead big buzzy item, Ryan W. saying it. Too bad it was ended with JR's comment. So yes, JR receiving negative feedback. He was wrapping up the Dynamite broadcast. He was plugging next week's show, and he referred to it as WWE Dynamite was still on the air. He tweeted out, "Yep, I apparently made an untimely error tonight at show's end. No excuses, and I'm not quitting," with a happy cowboy hat emoji there at the end. I saw you chimed in on this a little bit on Twitter already, didn't you, Paul?
Yep, I sure did. There's a couple things that made me, like, I actually, before I'd even watched the episode, I'd seen Raj tweet about it. And it was a situation that when it happened, it was very glaring. It was one of the last things that you heard as they went off the air. But I felt compassion for him, because I know that the way the internet is already like barking at him and like biting at his heels to get him to retire, because they think that his time is done or he needs a different place in the company. And then the other part of it is, like, the guy has worked for another company for 25 years.
Right.
The majority of his career was spent announcing for someplace else. If you don't think that that's so deeply ingrained in his brain that occasionally that crap just pops up and comes out of his mouth because that's what he's programmed to do, then you'd be wrong, and you don't quite understand how human nature works. I think that the bigger picture for me, what it brings to light, is that I think that the talent in AEW spends a lot more time than they need to talking about and or to WWE, with like taking little digs at them and like whatever. And so to me, that keeps the competitor on your tongue and makes a slip a little more easy.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess you're referencing, first of all, the Bucks have already capitalized on this, right? Like, they already have WWE Dynamite in their Twitter bio, which is their way of communicating now. But you're obviously referencing as well, like, the busted open comments that Bully Ray made about Eddie Kingston. Shut the F up, stay in your lane, long and the short of it.
We can get to that, and that's a whole different scenario. But I think that
let's throw it in now. You're already talking about it,
Right, but I mean, I just think that what I was specifically talking about is that it's twofold, because they do not ignore the wrestlers' pasts, right? So they are, while they may not mention WWE by name, they certainly make reference to the wrestlers' pasts, many of whom have been in WWE. Mm-hmm. And so that puts it at the forefront of thought, and which is good, because the audience is not going to, we don't forget just because somebody is no longer with WWE. We do not forget that. WWE does the exact opposite. They may say all around the world, but we know what that means, But they also make little digs at things and constantly say like, and it's not just Eddie Kingston. They'll be like, you won't see this anywhere else, or like, and we know where they mean.
Right.
So they seem to constantly, and of course, Tony Khan won't shut up about them. So Tony Khan himself does not shut up about WWE. So the fact of the matter remains that the entire company culture has always got its eyes somewhere else. And so for that to like subliminally slip out your mouth, I mean, I think it's easier.
I can see that. We also have here a lot of sympathy, it would seem, for Jim Ross.
I know, that was my tweet. I am sympathetic to him. I am compassionate to him because I know they're ripping him to shreds.
Yes, I'm saying on the other side of the social coin here, Kristen here, poor JR, Antonio, it was a mistake, easy to make. Give the guy a break. Anthony, yeah, I noticed Jim Ross said that. I was like, huh? But then, you know what, though? Yes, JR is getting old, but he is by far one of the best. Give the guy a break. So a lot of people here, Charles and Green, yeah, So, I mean, I'm with you, man. And I'm a big I just like Jim Ross. Like, I know he's a passionate guy about pro wrestling. There are a lot of people at his age and tenure in the business that are kind of just doing it, but he really does he's really, truly engaged with the product. And I mean, for my money, like a lot of the calls there's just a nostalgia factor that comes when you hear Jim Ross calling your product. And you're right. He's just in a bubble for too long in one place. So whatever, it's going to, seep through sometimes, I guess. So, yeah. Amen, Paul. All right. Says Montage. Amen. All right. Let's, the other topic I want to bring up coming out of Dynamite last night, Britt Baker and Rebel, they picked up a victory over Nyla Rose and Vicky Guerrero, who got ring time. Is that Vicky's first wrestling match in AEW? It has to be, right?
Of course it is. It's her first wrestling match in probably 10 years.
Okay. So at one point during the match, Nyla Rose went for a pin on Baker. Rebel ran over to break things up. She slid into the pin, and it looked like she injured her knee. She crawled to the corner. There was doctors that checked on her. She was carried out. Fightful saying word backstage is that she suffered a dislocated kneecap while breaking up the pin. It was said that Rebel was in good spirits backstage. The usual recovery time is about 6 weeks for an injury like that. But good on Nyla for immediately noticing what was going on and getting her to the ropes and for them working around it. They handled it well.
Yeah, I mean, while watching the match, I didn't even necessarily notice that something unusual had happened. I felt that this match was really unusual to begin with. Like, Rebel, not specifically known as a terrific in-ring competitor. Vicky Guerrero, not known as an in-ring competitor at all. I mean, she certainly has had that opportunity, but that's not how we remember her. So, pairing and doing this ahead of the big ultimate confrontation between Britt and Nyla, usually the booking of a match like this would go the opposite direction, right? That the challenger gets the pinfall in the tag team match somehow, some way. And then we come back with the champion pulling out the victory. It's not going to happen here, obviously. So
yeah, you couldn't do that, right? Because like if Rebel, so I mean, you pick a finish, right? I mean, if you're not going to pin or submit Britt, you're not going to do that to Nyla. So Vicky winds up in that spot. I agree with you. It was very odd, and I attribute the finish to the fact that Rebel was just not able to do the finish. I think we both thought we were going to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess so. And I hope Rebel, the pairing of like Rebel and Britt is so funny, so that like they work so well together. Is she going to come back as like the new role model because she'll be in a wheelchair now with her kneecap, right? Like she's rolling around like, oh, and Britt's like, I think it'd be hilarious if Britt completely disregarded her after Rebel waited on her hand and foot, and then Britt and the evil heels like, no, you're still my lackey. You better wheel over here and get me what I need.
It is just like she just finished working the crutches, and now she has actual crutches. And, anyway. All right. Well, other AEW news here. Last bit of AEW news, actually. PW Insider reporting that veteran pro wrestler Sanjay Dutt has signed with AEW. Now, we noted earlier this week how Dutt left WWE after putting in his notice a few weeks back. He had been working as a producer since early 2019 for WWE. He was backstage at Dynamite. He's working as a producer, and it is believed that he is signed full-time to work with AEW in that capacity. Wow. I'm
good for him. Good on Sonjay. He had a very nice long run in ring, predominantly with Impact. And I think he started as a producer with Impact later on after that, producing matches for the X Division, then went to WWE. Now he's with the AEW. I think it's fantastic. We'll see what he brings to the product and if he's able to tighten some of the screws.
Yeah, I know with Sanjay, he worked with Jeff closely on breaking into the India market. Do you remember this? Like they did Ring King and I just wonder is obviously India is not in a position right now to, be doing much of anything at the moment because they're far from under control like we are here in the States.
Right.
But, we just had the Bollywood Boys on Waltman's podcast today, and I just spent an hour talking with them. And obviously they were also very instrumental in that push to break into the Indian market. And, I don't want to say that's the key reason Sanjay Dutt is in AEW is that AEW is looking to maybe break in more in India, though it could be, I think, part of it. But that's just the thing is Sanjay brings so many different tools to this position that aren't just here's how to do a great 7-minute match, Well,
I would not be entirely shocked if this is the groundwork for something like that, because as recently as earlier this week, I cannot remember the name of the very talented, very well-built, handsome young Indian wrestler that they've got with them. But I saw him on their social media as well, talking about AEW. So, it's planting of the seeds and the laying of the groundwork. Yeah. So, and if you are AEW, you undoubtedly want to grow your viewership wherever that is globally. And we saw, WWE do it, and we heard about it for God knows how long, 6 to 8 months. There are, in fact, 1 billion viewers in India. So if you can break in there, and they're also, the great part about India is that they're also very open to Western culture in terms of consumption of it. They're not necessarily acclimating to it, but unlike someplace like China, which has similar numbers of people, but they are very closed off to influence from or participation in Western culture.
Yeah. I think with Sonjay, you've got a guy there who's worked, television deals and stuff with Jeff. And by the way, I don't know what's going on with Jeff right now. He spent a lot of time on the beach. Doesn't seem like he's backstage at Raw. But Sanjay Dutt, just again, so many different tools and pieces that he brings to it. And I'm going to be really interested to see how he, moves along in this role. Antonio Garcia here kind of, bluntly saying he's taking hold of his career before WWE get a chance to fire him. Good for him. Maybe a little truth to that, man. If you're sitting there on eggs, walking on eggshells every day, people that you didn't think were going to get fired, maybe there is some truth to that.
I wouldn't be surprised by it. And also, even if you're not specifically on eggshells, if you are looking at your career situation, and we forget, for these people, pro wrestling is their career. And for any of us who have a career out there, you get a little strategic with your career. You're like, okay, if I do this and this, it's going to move me to this place that I want to be. And if you know for a fact that your company historically has a kind of a tendency to let people go after a certain amount of time, or you're not getting where you want to go, the next opportunity presents itself. So you go, you just go. Mm-hmm. The company has no loyalty to you. So why are you having any loyalty to them?
Hopefully we'll get him on AEW Unrestricted or something like that soon. I'd love to know exactly why Sonjay felt this was the right time to make this move. And also, as a producer, you're more of an employee. You're not an independent contractor.
Absolutely correct. You're behind the scenes.
You have the ability to say, I'm giving my 2 weeks notice, which is not something I
do not have a 90-day non-compete clause.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. Unique situation. Well, speaking of the developmental system at WWE, Fightful reporting, of course, this is going to be a busy week at the Performance Center. Vince is scheduled to visit today. A lot of main roster wrestlers also at the PC this week as well. It was noted that many wrestlers that have been off WWE TV for quite a while have made the trip to the Performance Center, including Sasha Banks. She hasn't been seen since dropping the SmackDown Women's title to Bianca at WrestleMania 37. It was also reported that wrestlers who have asked for time off were not exempt from being at the Performance Center for training this week. So all hands on deck. We are getting everybody refined, polished, ready for TV come July 16th.
This is got to be the like scramble time for people, because for these, they've gone from competitive athletes who are accustomed to performing like, 7 shows a week, or maybe 8, depending on the day or the particular week we're looking at. And then they've gone down to like one day a week. And some of the people at the top levels may not even be training in terms of like in-ring training the way that they used to. So the ring rust thing does happen. And we're looking at the possibility that they're going to be back on the road full time. And they've just not been used to that. Like we know how exhausting that can be. Even just the travel alone, anybody who's gone on a vacation and returned from their vacation feeling like they need a vacation, like that's what the life of the professional wrestler is, because they're on the road every single day. So it's move from hotel to hotel and place to place and be at the show and do the show. And it's not exactly the same as just like waking up at 8 o'clock, going to the office at 9 and coming home at 5. They have very full days that they're not accustomed to meeting those standards right now. And we're going to have to see them do that.
Yeah, and with Vince down at the Performance Center, I saw a fan on Twitter, nameless fan as I'm scrolling or whatever, but point out how like the names that have been, been looked at, right? Main roster, Bronson Reed, Killer Cross, like these are the big guys of NXT. Is this what Vince is like? Vince coming in and, like the larger, bigger characters are going to get plucked away, made WWE superstars, and not to be dismissive of guys that aren't, 6'10" or 5'10" and above, but are we going to see a landscape at NXT that's, not, it's the opposite of the land of the giants, because Vince took all the giants.
Well, we've always seen that landscape in NXT. That has always been part of the appeal of NXT, is that they know what to do and how to present those smaller wrestlers, people of a smaller stature. They've obviously had a history of big men as well. And we get to see, people like, we've seen how amazing Dominik Dijakovic has done since he's come up to the main roster. They really know what to do with a giant like that.
Killing it.
Absolutely. Like, look how well they did with 6'2" Aleister Black. We see like what a superstar he became. They take the big guys up. The problem that I have, I'm really skeptical, is that they move these men up, and women, like not just the men, but they took Mercedes Martinez for a bit, and they took Mia Yim. They take them off of this brand where they're so over, and then they put them in a landscape where they're just lost with no direction and no interest in developing them, or no knowledge of how to develop them. And then the majority of the people would have been far better off in terms of the way their career has been presented by simply staying put.
Damian Priest is another big guy. It really, I'd love to look at the heights and sizes of the people that have been called up to the main roster coming out of NXT. And with Priest, I know he's been off, I guess, personal reasons. So I don't want to I don't know how to feel about that. Right. But after the Bad Bunny stuff, like they were just done,
I don't know if it's a personal reasons, like that's not the time to let your personal life pop in. And you've come in, they brought him in. They had him in one of the most high profile feuds that they had going into WrestleMania. They paired him literally with a star 5 times the size of anybody on the WWF or WWE roster. Reality is that Bad Bunny reaches an audience that put Damian Priest in front of people who've never watched wrestling before.
Right.
So he was poised coming out of that. Like, it would not have shocked me if they'd have put him on a fast track to make him immediately he'd had the WWE title by SummerSlam. It would not have surprised me one bit, because he had that level of exposure. And if he could, if there was any way that they could reincorporate Bad Bunny into that storyline where, he comes back, you get those eyes on your new champion, and he was over with those people.
Yeah, and I even think that you could do just him and Bad Bunny staying friends on Twitter, I think would be enough, right? You could throw up this week's tweet, Bad Bunny and Damian Priest, we're joking about this. Like, keep that rub going in a different way. And again, I don't really know how to comment, because I don't really know why he was gone there for a little while, for whatever.
No idea.
But by the time you get to Zombie Lumberjack match, I can pretty much tell they're just giving you stuff to do. And he didn't win the Money in the Bank match, right? He's not going to be in Money in the Bank. I don't know. I mean, I would hope that there's something, but right now, again, hot start, probably the hottest start, I think, of any NXT person to come to the main roster and then just poof back in the landscape with everybody else.
It's been very disappointing. I mean, I'll say that I think that it's been disappointing to see whether you come from NXT or not, like the way they start and stop people over the last couple of years has been disheartening at best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jonas Tiger here, hoping they push Damian Priest more better, but that's futile. And then Antonio here saying biggest disaster so far, Keith Lee, another big guy. Is this
unbelievably huge disaster?
Is this just what Vince does? He just looks at NXT. It's like not even like a talent. It's not even folder. It's just a white chalk line. Everybody line up. If you're over the line, Vince wants to see you. If you're not, Adam Cole, congratulations. You're going to be in the main event of NXT for the rest of your life because Triple H likes you, but you do not you can't ride the roller coaster. Sorry, buddy.
You know, on my Twitch channel, Nick, I'm actually watching. The followers and I, or the viewers and I, are going back watching these old school Mid-South wrestling shows from 1983, which was right before. And there's a reason I'm mentioning this because this was right before WWF at that time exploded internationally the way they did with like Hulk Hogan and all of this, and then the simulcasts everywhere and becoming the WWF that we knew or know now. And at that time, if you go back and watch those old Mid-South shows, every single person in the main event level, even down to the mid-card, almost exclusively end up in WWF. And across the board, almost every one of those people who was a top star in Mid-South ends up being a star, but because we know them, but they don't really succeed in WWF. And what I'm reminded here is like Vince of the mentality was like, we're going to take them so that they don't have that talent and we're going to use it however we can. So I wonder if like Vince is sitting in his office being like recreating his own like kind of a territory war with Triple H. Like, you've really created some stars. I'm taking them. We're going to do this. Oh, we don't really need him. Like, he's just another big guy. He's a this or that. And then they just keep churning out new stars and he keeps ruining them. And then eventually maybe they get to come back like Finn Balor did and for a little bit of retribution of their own.
Wow. I had never thought about how Vince, so bored and so rich, decided to get back to the old heydays of, remember when it was fun to do whatever I wanted with the territories and push people around? What if I just recreated that and I had the ability to do it all the time? Wow. What a thought.
But at the same time, I think that anyone who thinks that he probably does not have a level of competitiveness with Triple H, I think it definitely exists. Like, I'm not going to let my son-in-law do better than I'm doing.
I've said it a couple times now, but the moment I saw that Cross came out, I saw that WWE main event entrance with Cross with the belt, but no smoke, no Scarlet. I just saw Triple H just in his office, just like ripping up papers, like, well, I had a 6-month arc here for Cross, and we were going to do things with him and Scarlet, but I don't know if I'm going to have him or her or just him or what now in 3 weeks because Vince is going to do whatever he wants.
I heard you say that on a past broadcasting. It's how it is possible for someone within this is the same company, no matter what brand you're on, you're in the same company. So for someone at Raw or SmackDown to look at Cross and Scarlet and what they do together and the kind of success that they have together, to not want to bring them as a package deal, it's like, what is your problem? Like, what are you thinking? Are you sitting there literally so rich that you're just burning the money to light your cigar? Like literally burning money because they are cash together.
One would think. I think Vince just, I don't think he really like, I see people here like, Jonas, Vince doesn't even watch NXT. He has to go down there. I was thinking about that as we were getting ready for this. I imagine Vince walking in being like, God, this place is great. Did anybody tell me we had this place?
Who are these people?
Look at all these rings. Matt, A-Train? What? Just a completely different universe for him. And then showing him NXT tapes, he's like, this show's awesome. It very much feels like that kind of a disconnect sometimes.
And it is because, thinking about those Mid-South days that I was just talking about that we're watching right now, you see the people come from that territory up to WWF, and they become like this bastardized version of what they were. Like, you know what? Like, he was a badass. Like, Jim Duggan was a badass. We're going to bring that 2x4 thing, but except it's not going to be a real 2x4. It's going to be a styrofoam one because kids love that. And he's going to, babies are going to love him. Or Junkyard Dog, like, yeah, we're going to have you come out. Like, you had a funky entrance song. Like, we're going to have you grabbing cakes. You're going to grab them cakes. That's going to be amazing. It's going to sell a record. And you're going to like jump around and do, and there were bastardized versions of these characters they had played everywhere to great success. And then they come up and it's like, no, we're not going to have you do that. We're going to have you do this. You got to sell an ice cream bar.
Yes, I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Can you sell me an ice cream bar? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Bump had Otis on the other day, and he debuted a new shaved. He's already shaved, but now he's cut his hair, so he doesn't have long hair anymore. Short hair, shaved. He's just looking more and more like Chris Farley as we go along.
Yes, I heard that he parked his van down by the river for that interview. Mm-hmm. Did it from the car. Mm-hmm. Again, this is somebody who like they got a tremendous like huge push, and then we're pulling every single power cord. This is stopping now.
Big guys, wide guys, those are the guys that Vince is pulling. You're tall, you're big, Vince will give you a shot. And that's not the same for the women, right? Like the women, it's interesting, like of the people that make the leap from NXT to the main roster, it seems like the women have more often than not found more success, right? I mean, pretty much every NXT woman they've brought over has found some level of success in some way. And a lot of the times, like, over
Mercedes and Mia
excluded, but I mean, look at you got Sasha, Bianca, Charlotte, Becky, Bailey. I mean, Alexa is still a central figure. You're obviously a big fan. I mean, all of these women that were in NXT that get brought over, a lot of them much more successful than the male side of the equation. And maybe that's just because Vince isn't as interested, right?
It's plausible, but I also think that they have a significantly diminished number of women compared to men. So the women, when they get brought over, they're usually brought over, I'm guessing, to play a very specific role of some kind because the talent roster there is smaller. So you have to come in and play an integral part. The difference I think that we see is that these people will frequently get called up from somewhere. And then that means because that number is so small that somebody who's on the roster already is clearly going to lose their spot. It's usually Naomi. It's usually Naomi.
But you're right. And then everybody will tweet about it, and then she'll get a push there for about 3 weeks.
For like a minute.
Lastly here, we're talking about ice cream bars. Let's talk about hamburgers. Fast food chain Burger King, also a big fan of the ongoing rivalry between Orton and Riddle. Riddle's mentioned Burger King and their signature, the Whopper, in several recent promos on Raw, including a backstage segment with Damian Priest. Riddle and Priest visited a nearby Burger King restaurant yesterday, and Riddle tweeted about it, plugging the new King sandwich. BK responded and wrote, "This is the best storyline in wrestling." And just made me a little reminiscent of Jerry Lawler and how he was the Burger King, and now how Burger King is back in my storylines.
I want to plug the King, first of all, because it's delicious, but second of all, because of the fact that Burger King launched in their launch of the King, they specifically targeted the very anti-LGBTQ oriented Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
So they said that, you can enjoy the delicious King even on Sundays because they're closed on Sundays. Chick-fil-A is closed on Sundays. And also they are donating, like, I don't know if it's still ongoing, but something like 40 cents of every King purchase goes to an LGBTQ plus charity or nonprofit. So I immediately ran out and bought a King, and it was quite delicious.
All right. Well, that's going to bring us to the mailbag. That's the end of the show. Go get a King, everybody. Thank you.
King is delicious.
So good. Tastes like
not hate. Doesn't taste like hate.
There you go. Thank you to Rodney Mack, by the way, for that time as well. Go support SWE. That's great to hear you're watching SWE. You like that product.
I do. Yeah, I like the SWE product. When I was driving back from from Florida, I drove through Texas to get to California, obviously. And during the entire time I was there, I was like streaming in the car the SWE product. So, and of course, I'd interviewed Tim Storm a couple years ago, and he was the SWE heavyweight champion at the time, and talked to me about it and that old school feel, which I like a lot. So it appeals to me. And now we've got Charlie Haas, who's playing a very different version of Charlie Haas than we've ever seen, and they have some great talent there. I love Nigel Rabbit. The manager.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, go support SWE. Personally put over by Paul Pratt right there.
Exactly.
Holla holla play, Teddy. Sending our best. Okay. At Wink Daily, that's the Twitter account to follow. At WINC Daily, if you want to vote in the daily poll, find out when new shows go out, new content goes out, all that great stuff. Today's poll question: who is the best heel in pro wrestling at the moment? Is it Roman Reigns, MJF, Bayley, or somebody else? A little over 350 votes here in the last hour. 55.7% say Roman Reigns. 35.1% say MJF. Only 7% showed love for Bayley, and 2.2% somebody else. Paul, who do you think is the best heel in pro wrestling at the moment?
While it's getting a little bit repetitive to me, I think that the most captivating heel storyline on television right now is Roman Reigns. Mm-hmm. I think that it anchors that entire show, and I think that's one of the things that is important. You know, like it's such a defining part of SmackDown.
Yeah, I agree. Roman Reigns, 100%. Credit to MJF. I was just watching the main event this morning. I was like, I want to see who people hate more, MJF or Roman Reigns. And I wanted some representation. And I thought the top heel, I don't know, like maybe I should have put Britt, but I feel like Bayley's a better heel than Britt at the moment because people really like Britt, and they don't. Bayley's getting heat. She's going out there and getting heat right now.
I mean, Bayley's very, very entertaining. I think that the response might have been different if we'd asked like, who is the most entertaining heel? Like, you know, like I think that for me, when I think of like the heels, like Baron Corbin, you know, I saw a lot of people responded, Baron Corbin. And one of the people like commended you, Nick, because they said that Corbin gets like that not cool heel heat, meaning that cool heels like sort of play to the fans, and the fans like secretly like them, but they hate them because that's their job, like Britt Baker, right?
Right.
Baron Corbin to me gets what is often referred to as go away heat. He just irritates me. And I don't know that it's an act. I don't find it entertaining. It's irritating. And I think that there's a fine line between like irritating people and getting like heat versus entertaining and getting heat. MJF is entertaining and gets heat. The Roman Reigns storyline to me entertains me, and I get, you know, they get the heat. But I want to say also, while we're talking about that, what did you think about the promo that MJF cut last night in advance of his match with Sammy Guevara, where he was talking about Chris Jericho, where he was talking about Sammy Guevara, and then talking about himself? Did that stand out to you at all?
Not really. No. Why? What are you getting at here?
No. It was funny to when I was watching that. I was like, this is really good. You know, he's very good at what he's doing. It's a great heel.
Right.
But the reason that it stuck out to me is because I felt like he was walking this line between heel promo and telling the truth so closely and so finely, because some of the stuff that he was saying about Jericho, I was like, I know I'm supposed to dislike this, but I agree with that a little too much. Like, at this point in time, you're kind of a shadow of what you were even when AEW started. So it was just, yeah, it made me like be like, he has a point.
Yeah, well, good heels tell the truth. So anyway, 6 Rings 9880 did a write-in for Slapjack. God bless.
Always Slapjack. Somebody's always loving Slapjack for us.
Always Slapjack. Couple, yeah, like you said, a couple write-ins for Corbin. Dubs Ryan after last night. Ethan Page on his way. I almost put Ethan Page in the poll. Decided to do Bayley instead. But man, Ethan Page, talk about a guy who is primetime ready. The body, the experience, the promos, everything is clicking right now for Ethan Page.
Yep. Super talented. I started popping for Ethan Page of course, when he was still in Impact, I'm a big fan of tag teams. The North was outstanding. But some of the stuff that they did in early lockdown when they were sort of stuck in Canada, producing their own videos and vignettes, the stuff was hilarious. And it showed me that they have a real mind for creative direction, that he wanted his character persona to go, and he jumped into it, and he's still a year and a half later still pushing for it. So I appreciate what he's doing.
We have Jonas here saying MJF is the funniest heel, most obnoxious. I think a lot of people would agree with that.
True.
Antonio Garcia, a good heel is someone that can sell pay-per-views because the audience just wants to watch them lose. Doesn't matter. The baby, I don't think any of them are there yet. Are there good heels at the moment? That's another question.
I definitely think there are. MJF, I was watching that Sammy Guevara MJF match last night, and somebody tweeted something about it, and somebody responded, back like that they want to see that match again, like they, with a different outcome. And my thought was, and my response was that's why I think that they've developed this very wisely. And this is going to be the feud that they already have in their mind that is going to carry out for probably the next 5 years. We're going to see variations of this, probably with Sammy Guevara chasing MJF for various titles over the course of time. And I think that this is going to develop into their main event roster feud, probably for the world title in AEW in 5 years' time.
Those two, Darby, Orange Cassidy, and Adam Page, those are the five that are going to be pillars here. I'd say over the next 10 years. Like, you're going to watch those five.
How old is Orange Cassidy?
Orange Cassidy cannot be. I mean, I maybe 30. Orange Cassidy is, holy crap, he's older than me. He's 37.
Exactly.
Wow. Damn.
Exactly. Little known secret, folks. You think he's like a 20-something, but he's actually 37.
I did not know Orange Cassidy was 37 years old. Wow.
I threw a pipe bomb because I know how old he was.
Wow.
I kind of set you up for that. I knew. And that's the thing. Like, if they don't strike while the iron's hot, people think of him in this young up-and-comer category. And I think it's because he's like the middle-aged guy who sneaks into the high school prom. So he's like passing himself off as something, that he's not. He's like this laissez-faire type of character, but he's actually in his late 30s, which for me is like, if you're not committed to wrestling yet, like if you haven't decided that it's like what's going to pop you, if you're like, I'm still thinking about it at 37, maybe. But the fact is he does not have like this huge, long 15-year span ahead of him to like figure this out. And AEW doesn't have that time for him either.
Yeah, man, that caught me off guard. I thought that he was like, well, okay, so the other 10 years, like they're going to be building around.
Absolutely.
Adam Page and Darby. Okay, well, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Paul, this was a great talk. Rodney, thank you again, of course, once again, for coming on the show. Tomorrow, we're going to wrap up the week, last interview of the week, big one here, part 2 of my conversation with Dr. Frank Ramascavage. Now, Dr. Frank was the WWE doctor from 93 to 2006. And the last installment, you got to hear him talk a little bit about Steve Austin breaking his neck, how he rode in the ambulance with him. He heard him talk about taking Mick Foley's teeth out of his nose after Hell in a Cell. So it rolls on. More gruesome stories with Dr. Frank about various times he's had to treat, save, whatever, WWE superstars. So that'll be on here tomorrow. That'll also be on our YouTube channel, WrestlingInc.com. Support that on all socials. Wrestling Inc. podcast at night after the big shows and on the RSS feed. And once again, Monday, we will not be having a show. So you should actually listen to tomorrow's show or today's show. Listen to that twice to keep our metrics good. And if you want, by the way, I never promote this. I know there's a lot of people watching, but if you want to help the Wrestling Inc. Daily, great, easy way to do that is just go to iTunes, 5-star rating, leave a comment. Let's screw with the analytics. Let's glitch the matrix. Go over there, show us some love over on iTunes.
Glitch the matrix, even.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, I watched a documentary about it recently. Paul, what do you want to put over here to wrap up the show today?
Oh, wow. I'm just coming off a pretty busy 2-week period of professional wrestling related stuff. But the big news for me today is that the new issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated dropped, I think, today, maybe on newsstands. And one of my stories is on the cover. I'm very excited. It's a lifelong dream that has come to fruition. Thank you to the people at specifically Kevin McElvaney at Pro Wrestling Illustrated for making that possible. And hopefully all of you will go check out why Ricochet versus Ali was the greatest feud that you have never seen, even though it was on Main Event.
Yeah. All right. Hey, and I am at Nick_Hausman, HAUSMAN over on Twitter. Once again, Pro Wrestling for Life, me and Waltman out right now. We're going to debut that over on Xbox YouTube channel at 3 Eastern. We're going to debut my Rodney Mack interview on Wrestling Inc.'s YouTube here in about 4 minutes. So check all of that stuff out. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I will talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked,